Just a little bit about me, though, for those of you who don't know a lot about me. I live in Austin with my husband, Doug, and we have 7 kids. I know, it's a lot. Yeah, I can always see people, they're like, so we have our 11-year-old daughter, and then we have 4 boys that are 6, 5, 4, and 3. Just wait. And then we have twin baby girls that are 1, and then I'm pregnant with number 8. So I'm only 12 weeks pregnant. However, I look 6 months pregnant, because when you've been pregnant this many times, as soon as you're pregnant, you look like you're pregnant. So my body's like, I know how to do this. My ab muscles are just like, we give up, all right. I teach in FP, and I promise it does actually work. But if I'm honest, I don't have a lot of clients. People really don't trust me with their fertility. The last remaining clients I had skipped out once I told them I was pregnant again. So anyway, so I worked for Planned Parenthood for 8 years, and a lot of times, I think probably the most common question I get is, how did you end up there? How did that happen? Did you grow up in this like super liberal feminist home where you were just sort of raised in that environment? I wasn't. But people are always trying to like track things back to the beginning. Like, where did this actually start? And I think I can sort of pinpoint it back to when I was a kid and how I was raised. And I really do believe it was the contraceptive mentality that opened the door for me to work in a place like Planned Parenthood. So some of you are like, whoa, that may be a stretch, but I'll sort of explain. So I grew up Southern Baptist. We're Catholic now, which is probably why we have so many kids. Gotta be open to life. But anyway, I grew up Southern Baptist, and I grew up believing that the thing you do before you get married, 3 months before you get married, is you go to the doctor and you get a prescription for the pill. I grew up in a home that was very contraceptive-minded, very pro-life home, very much against abortion. But I grew up knowing that my mom conceived me while she was on the pill. She often said, I remember when I was growing up, she often said, well, if I hadn't have gotten pregnant on the pill, I may have never had any kids, because we never had, it's like you never have enough money, you never have enough time, right? And so she's like, I think God just made it happen, because I don't know that I would have ever done it on my own. So I just sort of grew up knowing that. I grew up hearing the comments all the time from my mom and her friends when they would see families like mine. And they would say like, whew, somebody needs to talk to her about birth control, right? Or something like that. I grew up hearing those comments all the time. I never heard anything about abortion from my church. We certainly didn't hear anything about contraception. It wasn't something that anybody was against in my church. All the women were on birth control. That's just what you do. You get married, you get on the pill, that's it. So I remember when I was 15, I was a junior in high school, and all of my friends used to go to this place. It was called Milam County One Stop, and it was the Title X clinic in town. I grew up in a little small town, Rockdale, It was the Title X clinic, and they had WIC there. The Medicaid office, it was truly the one stop, right, for all of the government assistance programs. And so I grew up knowing that all my friends, when they started to have sex, when they wanted to have sex, they would go to the one-stop clinic, and Miss Wilmer Green would give them a bag of birth control pills that they would take home with them. And so, you know, that's what good Christian girls do so that we don't get caught, right, is we get on the pill. So all my friends were on the pills. I was like, well, God, I should be on it too, right? So, because that's the cool thing to do. So I made an appointment, and I went to the office, and I sat down with Miss Wilmer, and she asked me if I knew what kind of birth control I wanted, and I said, no, just the pill. And so she gave me a brown paper bag with 12 packs of pills in it, and she handed it to me, and she said, don't get pregnant. And I was like, okay, like, I don't, okay. There's no like instruction or, you know, hey, these don't work all the time, or if you're on antibiotics, you know, be careful. None of that. It was just like, here's your baggie. I didn't have to pay anything, and it was Title X, so I didn't have to tell my parents. And so it was great. So I'm on the pill, and I go to college, and I'm still taking my pill, not every day, because I didn't really know that was that important. But, you know, sometimes. And then if I miss, I just took 2, right? So that counts. So anyway, so I'm doing this, and this is like my life. This is how I'm living, right? And I get involved with this guy who was 8 years older than me, and lo and behold, I have a positive pregnancy test. And I'm like, what? This isn't supposed to happen. Like, I'm taking the pill sometimes. Like, I'm not supposed to be pregnant, right? And so I remember that day very clearly when I found out I was pregnant. I remember my boyfriend was sitting on the couch, and I walked in with a positive pregnancy test from the bathroom, and I said, I'm pregnant. And he was not phased. You know, people, they talk about, I was in this crisis, and like my mind was just moving so fast, and like my mind was completely blank. I had no idea what to do. And so my boyfriend said, oh, well, not to worry. He said, we'll take you to a clinic in Houston. I've taken other girls there before. And I would love to tell you that I said, well, wait a minute, you know, let's talk about it. Maybe we can do this. You know, what about adoption? I would love to tell you I said all those things. I didn't. I just said, okay. And so we drove to Houston, and in my car, and he dropped me off on the curb, and I walked in alone. There was nobody outside, nobody on the sidewalk. I'd seen those scary movies, right? With all the pro-lifers outside yelling. Nobody was out there. It was completely silent. And I walked in, and I remember sitting in this group counseling session, and this woman there who was counseling us, she showed us a video. And I guess after the video was over, we sort of all looked, you know, a little startled, and she sort of laughed, and she said, oh, don't worry, girls. I've had like 9 abortions. You'll be fine. And that did actually make me feel better, you know, because I thought, well, I'm only doing this once. So if she's done it 9 times and she's okay, then I'll be okay. And so I don't remember much about the procedure. I remember being very painful. And then I just remember waking up in a recovery room, and I woke up, and all these girls that I had been in my group counseling session with, they were all slumped over in their chairs. And I woke up, and as soon as the staff member saw me sort of waking up, she came over, and she got me dressed right in the middle of the room, and she gave me a saltine cracker and a cup of water, and she said, your boyfriend will be here soon. You can go sit outside. and wait for him. And she gave me a little baggie to take home with me. And even though I had told her that my contraceptive method wasn't working for me, obviously that's why I was there, they gave me yet another pack of birth control to take home. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know how their business model worked at the time, but I'll explain that more in a little bit. And so I end up marrying this guy. And not my current husband. But I ended up marrying this guy, and as we're separating, I found out I'm pregnant again. But at this time, I was already at Planned Parenthood. And I think I was drawn to Planned Parenthood when I first started talking to a woman who was recruiting volunteers because of this idea that they were there to help women, and they were there to provide contraception to women so that they wouldn't get pregnant, so that they wouldn't have to have an abortion. Because, of course, I believe that our goal at Planned Parenthood was to keep abortion safe, legal, and rare, right? And so how do you do that? Well, you have to provide contraception, of course. And that was really what initially attracted me to them. And I think that was what got me in the door. When I found out I was pregnant a second time, I was already working there. Staff got free abortions at the clinic. That was a perk of working there. And so I had my second abortion. And this time, when I was done, because I worked there, I opted for a different form of contraception. I opted for the Dopo injection, which then later I started getting these debilitating migraines, not knowing what was going on. And then I found out later through a bunch of testing that the Dopo injection had given me a condition called pseudotumor cerebri. And so I will take medication for this for the rest of my life. But even then, that didn't convince me that contraception wasn't right for women. And so I still continued to peddle contraception to women, even though it had hurt me personally, even though it had failed me twice. I still continued to peddle this to women in hopes that this was the answer for reducing the abortion numbers in our country. That was the hope, right? That if we contracept the masses, abortion goes away. And so I think about that time with Planned Parenthood. I think about my life growing up, just always having this sort of contraceptive mentality throughout my life. And I realized that it was that mentality that led me in the doors of Planned Parenthood. And you know, I ended up leaving Planned Parenthood in 2009. And I remember when I left Planned Parenthood, I went to the Brazos Valley Coalition for Life, which is no more. But when I went to them and told them I want to leave my job, I sat on their floor, and I remember saying, and there's Heather Gardner is here, and she was in the room when I said it, so I actually have a witness. I said to them, I will never be against contraception. I will never be a person that uses an FP, because you know what you call people who use an FP? Parents. So I was like, that will never be me. That will never happen to me. And they were like, okay, sure. And so it wasn't really until I started looking into what had drawn me into Planned Parenthood and what I had been then selling to the masses, that's what got me to actually look into what contraception was doing to our society and to these young girls that were pushing it on. So I'm gonna briefly share with you Planned Parenthood's business plan. Okay? Now, this is going to sound like some sort of weird conspiracy theory. I promise you it is not. This is Planned Parenthood's business plan, and they're rolling it out all over the country. They've done it here in San Antonio. This is what they do. So their goal is, their plan is to get into every private and public school system across the country. Okay? Check. They've done it here. FY. They're going to get into your private and public school system. And they're going to start teaching your children their sex ed curriculum starting in kindergarten. Okay. Now, they're not actually going to teach them about sex in kindergarten, but the goal is they want to break down their natural modesty beginning very early. The primary goal is that they want to establish a relationship with your child when they're 5, 6, 7 years old. Okay? Now, I will say, though, the Planned Parenthood curriculum for the first grade curriculum does actually have the instructor showing graphic sex acts with stuffed animals. First grade. Okay, then by the time your child is going through puberty and they're 10, 11, 12 years old, Planned Parenthood has already been in their life since they were in kindergarten. And so the educators are going to tell your children, look, you're going through there's a lot of confusing things happening to your body right now, and your parents don't get it. They don't understand what's going on, but we do. I do. And you can't trust your parents to talk to them about this. But you can trust me. You know me. I've known you since you were this big, right? And I know they say this because I used to say it to kids when I worked as a Planned Parenthood educator. And so, hopefully, by the time your child is 13, we already have them on a contraceptive method. And you don't know anything about it. Because our clinics are partly funded with Title X money. And Title X states that a minor child, doesn't have to have parental consent to get birth control. So we're going to get them on birth control. But we're going to put them on the method that has the highest human error failure rate. And what's that? The pill, right? That's intentional. I'm 38 years old, and I can't remember to take a pill at the same time every day within a 2-hour window. Okay? You ask an 11, 12-year-old to do that, you are automatically setting them up to fail. That's the point. Okay? Planned Parenthood knows that your child will fail. They're counting on it. They're banking on it. Because their own statistic shows that 54% of women who have abortions were using contraception at the time they got pregnant. See, Planned Parenthood knows that we actually don't need more birth control. What we need is more self-control. But self-control doesn't make them any money. Birth control does. So then, we're going to get them on a pill that won't work for them. And then, hopefully, by the time they're 16, 18 years old, they will have had their first abortion. And we have all these great laws in Texas, like parental consent, notarized parental consent. But guess what we also have in Texas? We have something called a judicial bypass. The Supreme Court ruled that any time there's parental notification or parental consent in a state, that the state also has to have a loophole so that children don't have to tell their parents when they're having an abortion. That's called judicial bypass. And here in the state of Texas, we have an organization that was created just to help minor girls get abortions without their parents knowing. It's called Jane's Due Process. And they will coach your child on how to get an abortion, how to talk to a judge, how to help a judge understand that they're old enough at 15, 16 years old to make this decision without your consent. Then your kids are going to go to college. Oh, and when they have their first abortion, we're going to put in that brown bag yet another pack of birth control pills, knowing and hoping that they will again fail. So then they're going to go to college, and college kids know everything, right? And they're very free and they're very empowered. and they're away from their parents, and so they're going to do even more crazy stuff. And hopefully, in those college age years, they'll have their second abortion. And yet again, we'll give them the pill when they walk out the door. And then they'll start their career. And they'll come into a clinic like mine, and we'll tell them, oh, you're never going to succeed in this new career if you have a baby. So of course you have to have an abortion. You've already done it 2 other times. I mean, it's your third one. It's no big deal. And they will have their third abortion. And hopefully, by the time they're 30 years old, your child, your grandchild, in the eyes of Planned Parenthood, will have hopefully had 3 abortions. That's their plan. And friends, I would love to tell you that their business plan is failing, but it is not. It is successful all around this country. Why? Because we are in desperate need of a culture change. And that really, we can all sit in here and talk about being pro-life. And being pro-life is good. And I like when you tell me you're pro-life. But I really like when you tell me how you're being pro-life. Because that's what it's going to take to change this culture. It's going to take people actively working toward the conversion of other people. That's what we see in pregnancy centers all across this country, converting the hearts of the mothers who are in crisis, converting the hearts of the fathers. And what we do is convert the hearts of abortion clinic workers who are in the industry, which, by the way, people said that would never work. When I started, I went to some pro-life leaders and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And they were like, good luck. Nobody thought that would happen because nobody actually believes that conversion can take place. Well, guess what? I've got 469 abortion clinic workers who will tell you that conversion does happen and that it is real. Women in our society today, they are craving truth. They are craving knowledge. Women are Googling natural birth control. They're Googling natural family planning because they know that there has to be something out there that is better. They just don't know what it is. I remember when I was going to my neurologist several years ago. This was before natural womanhood was available. And they put me on this medication. You're not supposed to get pregnant on it. And the doctor said, she said, well, what method of birth control do you use? And I said, well, we use the Creighton method, natural family planning. And she started laughing. And she goes, no, I mean, what do you use that actually works? And honestly, at that time, I didn't have the vocabulary to advocate for myself, so I was just like, what does work? That was sort of like, shut it. Like, it works, I promise. Right? I know I have 1 million kids, but it works. I wish I would have had the information from natural womanhood that I could have given to that doctor, and even if she wouldn't have given me the prescription, I could have put factual scientific information in her hand to hopefully convert her heart on this issue, because it's going to take conversion in the hearts of medical professionals as well, because for many of the medical professionals that are in here today, some of you I know, it's a very lonely road that they're walking. They have to sacrifice much in their career to do what they believe is best for women. And so I think it's important for us as pro-life people, as people who say they value the unborn, to know the facts of birth control, to advocate for better alternatives for women, and to not be afraid to be advocates for women. Like even men in here, like this, like you're involved in fertility too. Like believe it or not. It's not like just a tiny contribution, like it's pretty big. And so we need men advocating for women. We need women advocating for women. We need health providers advocating for their patients. That's what will bring about culture change. That's what will bring about conversion in the hearts of the medical community and in just our local communities. But you're going to have to talk about it. I tell people there are two things on my Facebook page that, like, if I just want to, like, incite a riot on my Facebook page, I'll talk about these two things. Sometimes I do. I'm Irish. Sometimes I'm just, like, looking to fight. So, okay, when I try to take away people's birth control and when I try to take away their Girl Scout cookies. People go insane. Like, I think the devil lives in those little Thin Mints, okay? Because, like, you try to take those two things away from people and they go bonkers, okay? So anyway, but it's important because every time I talk about this, like, and people think we're nuts. I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, like, you start talking about not taking birth control, that's so countercultural, guys. Like, people think you are crazy, especially if you have a lot of kids. They think you're crazy. But the reality is that we have to be strong on these issues. And now we have a place, like now we have a place, we have Natural Womanhood, we can send them where they have scholarly articles, they have medical articles that you can share with people. So it's not just like a bunch of yahoos saying, oh, I used NFP and blah, blah, blah. Like it's actually from a scientific and medical perspective. That's important because people listen to doctors, they listen to science. And for so long, women have been told by doctors that the only way to cure their fertility is to break it. Like, can you imagine if I went into a cardiologist and I was like, my heart is like so good. Like, I mean, I've got good blood pressure, I've got good beats per minute. Like, I'm really, like, my heart's really rocking it out. Can you give me a heart attack? Like, people would be like, what? Or if I was like, my hand, like, my fingers, they're awesome. Can you cut them off? Like, no, that would be insane, right? That would be like the definition of insanity. Nobody would do that. Yet, millions of women across the country are going into their trusted medical providers and saying, hey, there's nothing wrong with my fertility. I'm all set. Things are working how they're supposed to. Can you break that? And that is seen as the norm in the medical community. And that's sad. When I tell people how many kids I have, like, I don't know, like 8 out of 10 times people go, y'all getting fixed after this one? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure everything's working just fine. Like, nothing's broken, but that's what's happened in our society. Like, everybody sees fertility as a disease. And they see fertility as something that, healthy fertility is something that actually needs to be broken. And that's a sad state of affairs that we're in today. So it's going to take all of us together sharing about, I mean, this goodness that we have, this good news that we have, that there's not just this one size fits all. I mean, like, I can go to an OB and I can be like, not the OBs in here, but like I can go to another OB and I can be like, I have a headache. Have you tried the pill? I have a heavy period. Pill? I don't know, my shoulder hurts. Have you tried the birth control pill? It's like somehow the birth control pill has become this one size fits all for women. Women deserve better than that. And I truly believe that if we want to get at the heart of this abortion issue, which we all do, And we all know that abortion is such a grave tragedy in our society today. If we really want to get to the root of that, I truly believe that we do have to attack this contraceptive problem in our culture. Because when you look at studies and you see that where there are higher rates of contraception, there's higher rates of abortion, that seems sort of counterintuitive, but that makes total sense to me. Because if a woman if she's so desperate not to have a baby that she's willing to give herself cancer, risk of stroke, risk of DVT, risk of osteoporosis, risk of heart attack, if she's that desperate not to have a baby that she's willing to cause that sort of harm to her body, then if she does get pregnant, I think the next logical step would be abortion. So I truly believe that we will, if we really want to get serious about this, we will have to attack the contraceptive mentality in our culture, and we're going to have to be really bold about it. And that may mean that, like, you're not the popular kid in class anymore. You may not have a lot of people sit with you at lunch, but let me tell you something. God didn't put you here on this earth to be popular. He didn't put you here to win popularity contests. He put you here to spread His truth and His gospel of life. And that may not always win you a bunch of fans, but spreading His truth is always the right thing to do.